and welcome. You're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. The vote on the draft resolution, which would reinstate Russia's voting rights in the Parliamentary Assembly of Europe, has been postponed for further review. It means that the institution refuses to lift sanctions on Russia. To talk more about the outcomes of this voting, we're joined in the studio today by Vitaliy Martynyuk. He is the head of international programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21. Hello and thank you for joining us.
Good day.
So, as I have already mentioned, the decision has been postponed, and according to the delegate from the Ukrainian side, Volodymyr Aryev, the institution is not going to come back to discussing this very issue anytime soon. And this follows a very heated debate. What does it mean?
This means that there is no common views in the Assembly on this issue. On the issue of returning Russian delegation to the work of the Parliamentary Assembly. And that, as I see, there is a little crisis inside of the Assembly, because it is impossible to return Russia to the Assembly and to allow the Russian delegation to vote for very important decisions for Europe. And yes, Ukraine faced this, I can say, opposition inside the Assembly concerning the situation in Ukraine, concerning assessment of the situation in Ukraine, and concerning the attitude to Russia, to the state that waged the war against Ukraine. It is strange.
Bringing Russia back to the voting assembly would actually mean legitimizing all those horrible actions that are being performed by Russia, meaning the annexation of Crimea, the military intervention in Ukraine, what has been going on in Georgia and Syria, and so on and so forth. So basically the decision is right.
It is very strange because in January this year, the Assembly adopted a resolution number 2198 on the situation in Ukraine, on violation of human rights in Ukraine connected to the Russian aggression against our state. And one of the positions is that it is a war waged by Russia against Ukraine, and that the cause of violation of human rights is Russia and Russian aggression against Ukraine. And in this situation, some deputies of the Assembly decide to turn back the Russian delegation, and it is very strange as for me.
Okay, well, Irina Gerashchenko wrote in her Facebook, and I quote here, "A fantastic day in pace. The speeches of the Ukrainian delegation broke the discussion and managed to overwhelm the resolution, which changed the rules of the assembly and returned the Russian delegation." What's next?
I think that politicians, deputies of the assembly, supported by the Russian Federation, will try to continue this work, and will try to adopt a resolution, maybe in another forms, another words, but resolution which would allow Russia to participate in the work of the Assembly and the Council of Europe.
The next vote is in January, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So will there be a re-voting on whether to grant Russia a right to vote or not?
Yeah, the decision was postponed, and I think that the Committee on Rules will consider and will study lessons from this session, and will rewrite this draft resolution of the Parliamentary Assembly. Not to mention Russia, not to mention maybe sanctions or some critical words, but to change the procedure. So we will see another attempts to support the Russian delegation and to try to allow the delegation to turn back to the work of the Assembly. Yes, it will be in January. It is enough short period from October to January to update this draft resolution, but I think that the committee and those deputies who is in favor of the Russian position, they will try to do this.
Okay, but the fact that the voting happened on Tuesday, doesn't it seem weird because not all of the delegates are already in place, and it will be more effective to have the voting on Thursday? Nevertheless, it happened on Tuesday. Doesn't it seem that it looks like the pace is saying to Russia, see, we tried and it didn't work, and at the same time they didn't try hard enough to make it to the fullest?
It's a very interesting question, but I think that the Russian delegation and all supporters of the delegation were in a hurry. They tried to force other deputies and to persuade them to vote for this resolution. And
so it wasn't mainly the initiative of the Russian delegation to vote?
Yeah, I think, yeah, firstly, it was the Russian delegation who initiated this, but after that, Russian supporters decided to realize this idea.
Okay, and I also have a statement by the Vice Prime Minister of Ukraine for Education and Euro-Atlantic Integration, Ivana Klimpush-Tsintsadze. She said, Ukraine and the EU have never been as close to each other as they are now. Our partnership based on common principles and values already yields specific results in transforming the country and increasing opportunities for citizens, meaning that Ukraine is getting better, meaning that Ukraine is implementing reforms. Isn't this a so-called message to Russia that every country that Russia is trying to harass, Russia is trying to scare with a military intervention or whatever, is gonna get the support of the international community and is gonna blossom?
Yes, I would give an example that concerning this session of the Assembly of the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe, when not just our Ukrainian delegation to the Assembly made all possible efforts, but the Ministry on Foreign Affairs, the Ukrainian mission to the Council of Europe, and even civil society organizations. For example, I am a coordinator of one working group of the Ukrainian National Platform of Civil Society Forum of Eastern Partnership. And we initiated an open letter signed by the steering committee of this forum to Mr. Jagland and to the President of the Assembly with the demand to release all prisoners in Russian territory, in the territories occupied by Russia, and not to allow the Russian delegation to take full part in the work of the Assembly. It was just a little step, but the Ukrainian civil society participated in this process to defend, to protect Ukrainian interests, even in the Council of Europe, within the Council of Europe. Yes, you are right that after the occupation of Crimea, after the war waged by Russia in eastern Ukraine, Ukrainians have become closer to each other because this unity of the people, we can say, is provoked by this aggressive behavior of Russia.
Well, every nation tends to unify in the face of a common enemy, which is the country aggressor we're having harassing our territories right now. Anyway, we're all happy that the vote turned out this way. We hope that Ukrainians as a nation and the government of our country makes all that is needed and that is possible to have the same result in January, because we're all looking forward for it. Thank you so much for coming and clarifying the whole situation for us.
Thank you very much.
That was Vitaliy Martynyuk. He is the head of international programs at the Center of Global Studies Strategy 21. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned with UATV for more.